In my own little pocket of the world, I've recently been told by a couple of friends that more and more people are starting to reach out and ask for help, looking for information about, this silent abuse or all the different things that we Google that bring us to covert narcissism. This is touching more and more of our communities, our families, friends, coworkers, neighbors, and I'm glad that people are finding the help. I hate that it is becoming so much more prevalent. And I ask you to keep sharing this information with our world because you never know who out there is hurting. Sadly, there are so many people dealing with this and many of them still don't even know it. They don't know what's wrong. They're still trying to be perfect and still trying to figure out what's wrong with them. So many are still suffering in silence and isolation. To those of you out there listening to me that are helping your friends, your family, your neighbors, and your coworkers, from the very bottom of my heart, I thank you. We are building a community of support and care. It is happening, and I thank you for continuing to share this information. Welcome to the Covert Narcissism podcast. I'm your host, Renee Swanson. I am not a therapist, and you are not a victim. Now, this isn't about anyone in particular. In fact, most of you will probably be able to relate to this story. Most of you could probably put yourself right in the middle of it, and most of you could probably say, that story could be about me. You see, it's a typical covert narcissistic behavior and the impact that it has on the victim. So in this story, we're going to talk about Sarah and David. And these are just two made-up names, but they've been married for about maybe 15 years. Sarah is known among her friends for being compassionate, for being warm, and being caring. But at home, David makes her feel like a shadow of herself. So this story is about one particular evening. You see, it's a family gathering with Sarah's family. And in this gathering, she's expressing her disappointment about not getting a promotion that she was up for at work. She's committed a lot of years to this company. She works hard for them. She's dedicated to them. She believes in their mission, and she's been after this particular position. It really bothered her that a recent hire got the position instead of her. Well, while she's in the middle of sharing her feelings about this to her family, her husband, David, interrupts her, and he abruptly says, "Well, that's the way business goes. You should know that by now." And with a shrug of his shoulder, a wave of his hand, he dismisses her feelings and hijacks the conversation onto a topic of his choosing. Clearly, he was tired of listening to her. So later that night, when they are alone, Sarah tries to tell him how hurt she was. She tries to express to him that, it really bothered her that he just dismissed her like that in front of everyone. Well, instead of addressing her feelings, David responds by saying, "Hey, you're just imagining things. I didn't do that. No one else noticed." Well, Sarah insists. She continues to try to express her feelings here. And so now he sighs dramatically. "I can't believe that I have to deal with this after hosting your family all night. Do you ever think about how much pressure I'm under when your family's around?" And suddenly, the focus shifts. It shifts from Sarah's hurt feelings to David's supposed sacrifices. Well, now, in her mind, Sarah is justifying his rude and dismissive behavior. That kind of gets swept under the rug. Because, he was stressed. He does have a hard time, with my family sometimes, dealing with his in-laws, and he is open to that. So, maybe it's okay. He probably didn't mean what happened there, and we can just move forward. Well, now she is convincing herself that he didn't mean it, and that she should be grateful that he spends time with her family. So now let's move forward. The next day. Well, David casually mentions to Sarah's sister, who was there at the family gathering, by the way, "I don't know what's going on with Sarah. She's been so emotional lately. Maybe she's just stressed." When Sarah's sister brings it up to Sarah later, Sarah finds herself defending her feelings rather than addressing what really happened of being dismissed by David. David has rewritten the narrative for both Sarah and the people around her. Now, this rewriting of the narrative is the topic I want to talk about today. You see, covert narcissists control the narrative. And this leaves you incredibly isolated. It leaves you questioning your reality. Covert narcissists skillfully dismiss your perspective while at the same time crafting a version of the story that paints them as either being misunderstood or being the hero figure and the rescuer. They paint this picture that they are caring, that they are understanding. David tells Sarah, that's not what happened, and you are misunderstanding me. So he becomes the victim of Sarah. However, he goes to Sarah's sister and he tells her, I'm really concerned about Sarah. She seems to be really stressed here lately. Well, now he's the hero. So the narrative gets controlled by three dominant angles. One is to erase your perspective, completely dismissing it. The second is to insist on their own narrative. They never consider that, it might be wrong or that your perspective is valid. They just insist on their own. And the third is to then share their narrative with other people, making you look crazy. So let's go through these three angles. Erasing your narrative. When a covert narcissist dismisses your narrative entirely, this reinforces their control over the narrative. Your narrative takes up no space in their mind. None. It gets absolutely no room. You don't get, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't think of it that way. Or, boy, that's not what I thought, but that makes sense. No, you get none of that. You know how when you're making a request of someone through an email or writing a letter and you say, thank you for your consideration? With a covert narcissist, you might as well leave those words out. There is no consideration. They don't ponder it. They don't reflect on it. Oftentimes, I'm not even sure that they hear it. It just gets no space. You clearly are not worthy to have your own thoughts and perspectives. Now, I do want to take a minute and point something out here. Someone who tends more towards communal narcissism, they will say that you have a right to your perspective. They will tell you the right words. They might even voice your thoughts back to you to show how good of a person they are. But by the end of the conversation, your narrative has been completely dismissed and hijacked. And this only adds to the confusion because they say the right things. They say that they're hearing me. They say a lot of the good stuff that you would expect, then means that they're listening to you. But boy, I sure don't feel heard and validated. So when you're dealing with a communal narcissist, add another layer of complication here. Now, how do they erase your narrative? They invalidate your experience. When you attempt to share your perspective, they respond with phrases like, that's not how it happened, or you're exaggerating. This makes you feel unheard, and it minimizes your reality. They redirect the focus. So after stating, well, that's not how it happened, they will then go into their own narrative of events. So they redirect the focus and they just kind of hijack it and take it over. If you're bringing up something about their behavior, they will quickly shift the conversation to your flaws and your mistakes. That's one of the redirecting tactics that they use. This not only dismisses your narrative, but now it keeps the spotlight off of their actions. They might use humor and sarcasm. Maybe they laugh it off. They'll laugh off your concerns, responding with sarcastic remarks like, oh, here we go again, or you're worried about that. That's so petty. This trivializes your feelings and it creates an environment where you just become hesitant to speak up. Now, I'm not going to bring it up next time because, it's just going to get brushed off or dismissed or made fun of. Another tactic that they use is they rewrite history. They will blatantly rewrite the events to line up with their version of the truth. When they say, that's not what I said, and then they'll tell you a whole new story. You're listening to it going, boy, am I crazy here? That's not what was said. So over time, this erodes your confidence in your own memories. By dismissing your narrative, they strip you of your own voice. And recognizing this tactic is key to breaking free from the grip of this. You see, everyone is allowed to have their own perspective, except for the target of a covert narcissist, but that's what I'm trying to get you to stop here. Everyone is allowed to have their own perspective. This is taken away from you when you're with a covert narcissist. Over time, the constant erosion of your viewpoint creates self-doubt. It creates a fear of speaking up. You just quit speaking up because it's just not worth the price. Well, this just leaves them more and more in charge. Reclaiming your perspective begins with recognizing these tactics and affirming that your experiences and your voice is valid. Even if they won't listen, you learn to validate your own perspective to yourself. Now let's go to the next thing that they do, which is insisting on their own narrative. So they erase your narrative. Now they're insisting on their own. Well, how do they do this? They do this by gaslighting you. This is when they distort the facts or events to make you doubt your memory. For example, if you express a concern about their behavior, they may respond with, I never said that. And they go on and, like I said, say what they did say. So this is the going forward and creating their new reality. They'll plant seeds of guilt and obligation. They'll often frame their actions as sacrifices for your benefit. I only want what's best for you. After all I've done for you, and this is how you treat me? Well, this kicks in your guilt and your obligation, leaving you tethered to, a feeling of indebtedness to them. Another tactic is their reinforced learned helplessness. Covert narcissists subtly suggest that you're incapable of functioning without them. They question your decisions. They'll point out your perceived flaws. They overstep under the guise of helpfulness. I'm just helping you to make sure you can do it right, leaving you feeling inadequate. I sometimes wonder, how did any of us manage to survive without them? Clearly we are incapable of functioning without their great help. The third step in all of this is when they start sharing their narrative with the people around you. While controlling your internal dialogue, which we've already talked about, they now work hard to manage how others see them and see you. This external narrative is crafted to maintain their image while keeping you isolated. How do they do this? They do this with their charismatic persona. So the covert narcissist often presents as being charismatic, as being kind, compassionate, selfless. They'll do generous acts in public. They volunteer. All of these things to build this positive image that, let's be honest, it contrasts starkly with their private behavior. But it shapes the narrative around them. People around them are going to struggle to believe that they are, invalidating and dismissive and, just flat out mean and bullyish behind closed doors. They don't believe it because the narrative that the covert narcissist presents is of a good and kind and compassionate person. They then will start the "you're the problem" storyline. They will paint you as being unstable, maybe overly emotional, anxious, maybe you're stressed, or maybe you're just being difficult here lately. They will tell others, man, I'm really concerned about her or him. I don't understand, what's going on in their world right now. I'm just trying to help. I've tried to do all these things for them. So they're painting the picture that they are a great and wonderful person, step one. And now they're painting a picture that you have a problem and that they are trying to help you. The third piece of all of this is the triangulation. By involving others in the conflict, they amplify the isolation. They might share half-truths. They might even share outright lies about you to your friends, family, and colleagues, continuously ensuring that others doubt your perspective. Your perspective when you're living with a covert narcissist is being completely erased. The last piece of this is when they play the martyr. Covert narcissists often portray themselves as the long-suffering saints dealing with an ungrateful partner, and they're gaining the sympathy from other people, leaving you with no allies. Well, in the midst of this, how do you find support? How do you find people who are going to understand what you're going through, who are going to get it, who are going to listen to you? This is part of what leaves victims of covert narcissism so isolated. You can't talk to anyone who knows them because they control the narrative and you look crazy. So what happens? They continue to treat you horribly, and yet it continuously disappears into thin air because you keep sweeping it under the rug because you're in a kind of a helpless and hopeless situation. And this happens over and over and over. Covert narcissists are masters at controlling both your internal and the external narratives. But you hold the power to rewrite your story based on your reality, your perspective. By recognizing their tactics and taking intentional steps to protect yourself, you can regain your confidence. You can reclaim your truth. What are those steps? First is recognizing the patterns. See the manipulation for what it is. Play observer for a while. Step back and just watch. Don't react. Don't engage. Just watch. Journal. I cannot say enough about journaling. Journal to hold on to your own narrative. Document what's going on. Reread your own words to remind yourself of your perspective. That perspective they're trying to erase, you have to hang on to it for dear life. Limit what you share with them. I've already mentioned limiting your reactions to them. They feed off of those reactions. Step away from that game with them. Do not defend yourself against their false narratives. Just step back. Let your character speak for itself and focus on living authentically you. Last is seek support. Close friends, family, a therapist, a coach, a support group, people who will validate to you that you are not alone and you are not crazy here. You've got to have that help, even if it's just one or two people. Find those ones who will listen to you and start to validate your perspective and give you space for your perspective. Your story matters, and you deserve to be heard without judgment. You deserve to have your own perspective matter. And if you're ready to take those next steps towards healing, if you feel like you're stuck and you're not going anywhere, please reach out to me. Check out my coaching services at covertnarcissism.com. And I want to mention something here that I've not mentioned on the podcast before. I want you to know that right now I am offering a 10% discount to the next 5 people that sign up for my individual healing program. You can do it on my website. Go to the coaching sessions page and go to the individual healing program and then use the discount code. That discount code are the letters CNG, Covert Narcissism Group, so CNG, all 3 capital letters, followed by 2025, the year 2025, your year of healing. And don't forget to subscribe for more episodes like this one. Thank you for joining me today. Remember that you are not alone and you are stronger than all the lies that you've been told. I wish you so much peace on your journey of healing. You have been listening to the Covert Narcissism podcast. If you are struggling with covert narcissism in your life, I help people to heal from covert narcissistic abuse. If you are struggling with the isolation, the self-doubt, and the obsessive thinking, then this is the program for you. I offer both group and individual options. This is live, personalized coaching that is specific to covert narcissism. Reach out to me anytime. You can find me at my website, covertnarcissism.com. I'm not a therapist and you are not a victim. I am a coach and you are a survivor. I wish you so much peace on your journey of healing. The information provided by Renee Swanson and the Covert Narcissism podcast is for educational purposes only and is not to be used for diagnosis purposes and not intended to be a substitute for clinical care. Please consult a healthcare provider for guidance specific to your case. This material discusses narcissism in general. It does not claim that any specific person has narcissism and should not be used to refer to any specific person as having narcissism. Permission is not granted to link to or repost this material to support an allegation or a claim that any specific person is a narcissist. That would be an unauthorized misuse of the material and information provided.